What are the most common obstacles that prevent us from accessing other dimensions, realities?
In a sense, I just told you.
Okay.
The most common obstacle is yourself.
Okay.
And the lack of ability to believe that you already contain everything. That is really the only obstacle that each of you have created on your planet, is you simply are not being the fullest selves you can be. Now, that's all right. You don't have to berate yourself for this. You don't have to feel guilty about this, because that will only add more judgment and more difficulty and more obstacles to your process. But the idea really, fundamentally, just to answer you simply, is it is only that. It is how you see yourselves, and that's why we stressed it so strongly, that it is imperative you have clarity about who and what you are, because it is only your definitions of yourself that create the limitations that you call obstacles that would prevent you from accessing this all the time. Because this is natural. That's the first thing to remember. This is natural. This that we are describing to you now, and will continue to describe throughout this transmission, are only descriptions in certain forms, in certain terms, of that which is your natural self as a being, as a consciousness, as an entity. In that you create a personality structure as a mask to represent or present your consciousness in physical terms. This mask of personality can contain thoughts, perspectives, ideas that will to some degree place limitations upon your true knowing natural self's ability to access anything and everything within the infinite in whatever way is appropriate for the dimension in which you are focused. So that's really the only obstacle. Anything that we may name as a specific obstacle, watch out for this, watch out for that, will still always only be a variant of the obstacle of not believing in yourself, of not knowing who you are, of not being your true, natural, original, core self. But that's what this transformational age on your planet is all about, is remembering who you are. Not learning who you need to become, remembering who you already are. So, in knowing, this is step one, really, in knowing that it's all about simply remembering who you already are, that recognition and realization alone will accelerate your ability to utilize these tools in a much, much, much more profound way, because you will know going in it's not something you have to learn how to do that you don't already know how to do. You're just remembering what you've forgotten, and therefore it's much easier. You follow?
Yes.
Does that help you?
Yes. There was another part of this question.
Oh, all right. Yes.
But I think you've answered it.
Let's make sure.
Yeah, okay. What is the key to unlocking this? And I believe you answered.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this one may have been handled also.
All right.
But the question is, what do we need to do to prepare ourselves?
Yes, that has been handled.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, we will get into more specific methodologies and processes in the actual preparation stage of the meditation. You follow?
Yes.
But first and foremost, again, the idea has to do with personality structure. The most important thing you can do, any of you, to prepare yourselves, so to speak, just to use that euphemism in your language, because in some senses, even the concept of preparation can be misleading. But the most important thing you can do, to use your words, to prepare yourself, is to again take time to examine your definitions of reality in every circumstance that you believe is important to you. Look at all the things in your life that are important to you, really important and really representative of your true desires and excitement, and decide, discover, explore and discover what really are your definitional relationships to that concept. How do you define yourself relative to that concept? to that thing you say represents your ideal self. How are you, the way you define your relationship to reality, how are you different than that ideal definition you have that you say you want to be? That's the real first step of preparation, is to find out what definitions allow there to be or appear to be a difference between the so-called idealized you and the you believe yourself to be. When you discover what that difference is in definition, you will then have the automatic power to change that definition, and in changing and transforming that definition, bringing yourself either at least closer to or in perfect alignment with the vibration of your idealized self. And that is really the preparation that needs to be done, is definition and redefinition. Does that make sense? All right. Does it not make sense to anyone in particular? If so, speak up. We want to make sure you are all understanding what we mean by these translational terms.
Could you go through an example with us on something?
Yes. The idea, again, therefore, is the concept of definition, and we have used this many times. We will use this as a very brief example. Look at even the definitions of some of the words in your language, such as the idea of doubt. We have used this many times. It's a good one to use to point out the illustration. Most of you have been taught to define doubt as a lack of trust. But this is not so, at least not in the definition of our reality. Doubt is, in fact, a 100% trust in a definition that doesn't work for you, that isn't aligned to your truth. You never, ever, ever, and believe me, you can take me absolutely 100% literally on this, with no exceptions whatsoever. You never for a second have ever had, are not now, and never ever for all time ever will have one moment where you actually lack trust. The issue and the question is not how do you learn to trust, but what definition are you putting your trust in? That's the only difference. Now, when you understand that you never lack trust, then you never have to learn how to trust. It's automatic. It's who and what you are. It's built into you as a creator. You know, as you say in your biblical language, you are made in the image of God, or whatever you wish to call creation. You are a creator, a co-creator. And therefore, it's automatic that you must trust that something at any given moment is true. Were it not so, you would have no experiential reality at all. In that you have some experience that shows you believe in something. You trust that something will happen. You may not always be consciously aware of what your trust is placed in, and that's part of the preparational experience. Find out what definition you put your trust in that would then result in the reality that you get being the most likely one, because it's that there is no empirical reason, none whatsoever, why that particular definition has to be any more real or less real than any other definition you could put your trust in and get an experiential reflection from. All definitions of reality are equal, and neutral. None of them have any more ability to manifest than any other. The ones that manifest are the ones you put your strongest energy in, and the way you determine, your motivation for determining what definition you buy into most strongly has to do with what definitions you have been taught to believe are true. But it's only a definition, and it is only a belief about reality, not of reality. Because there is no reality. There is no reality except your definition of it. That's what reality is. Now, we understand that because of inertia, in a sense, and momentum, and agreements, and agendas, and the idea of playing a certain game by certain rules, you're going to all experience a certain level of automatic manifestation that makes it seem as if your physical reality is unchangeable, except in very slight degrees. But even that is an agreement. And while you don't necessarily have to completely change the fundamental agreement, you don't have to completely divest yourself from the overall collective consciousness of your species, of your world, in order to make a change, the idea is that you can be far more flexible with your definitions, far more malleable with your definitions about the kinds of reality individually that you can experience, even within the collective. You don't have to be rigidized in the sense of being homogenized to an overall collective idea of what is supposed to happen or what is possible to happen. Within that framework of that very fundamental basic agreement that certain things will probably stay the same, such as gravity, generally, though you can change that too. But generally, for all of your personal desires, you will not necessarily need to change the idea of gravity in order to really experience fuller manifestation of your own individual truth within the collective. Because again, I remind you, and this is also very important to understand, and this is all very pertinent to the utilization of these tools. I remind you, the only true way, this is the paradox. Remember, paradox is the true power. When you're in paradox, that's when you're in your true center of power. So anytime you see paradox, you know you're on the right track. So, the true way that you support the whole is not, in a sense, by homogenizing yourself so that everyone becomes alike, but that you express your full individual uniqueness. That's how you support the whole. The example we have used, and this will be very quick so that we can move on to the next question, is the puzzle picture. All of you have played with the idea generally or know about the idea of what you call picture puzzles on your planet. You have many little pieces that you put together and they form a big picture. Now, you know, if you think about it for a moment, that the only way you're going to get that big picture is if you take each and every one of those differently shaped pieces and find out exactly where they fit. If all of those pieces decided to change their shape from their natural selves, you wouldn't be able to form the big picture, and therefore the big picture could not support or give, in a sense, validation to the individual pieces that came together to create it. We are not saying that you should never change, but that you will never necessarily need to not be yourself in any change that you make. You can change the picture on the puzzle pieces, but you don't necessarily have to change your basic shape, your truth, your nature, your true unique self in order to support the whole. When you become your unique puzzle piece fully, when you honor your original shape fully, then you fit perfectly with all the other pieces who are also willing to be their true shape, and together automatically you create the whole picture that then supports all the pieces. It is only when you try to be something you are not that the whole picture cannot be created. Does this make sense to you? Absolutely. All right. Does that answer your question then? Yes. All right. Let's move on.
Next question.
Yes.
In preparing ourselves, is there any specific music that we can listen to for easy access?
In a sense, your favorite. However, do understand that, again, hearkening back to some of the generalized truths that you all have agreed to abide by, in recognizing that what we are actually talking about here are ratios and relationships, then you can understand that the music in general that has the highest representation of golden proportion ratios and relationships will be the kind of music in general most conducive to helping you vibrationally align with these tools, since the music that contains the same ratios as the tools themselves, the polyhedra, exhibit, that will give you the best chance for some kind of synchronization with the form. You follow?
Yes.
You follow?
Yes.
So the idea is, in general, you will find that many of what you would call your classical pieces, especially what you would call, again, your Bach and Beethoven, and your Mozart, and this is not to exclude many of your modern pieces as well, but allow yourself to feel or even analytically examine the chord structures, the types of scales used, and discover those pieces that have the highest amount and most consistent and coherent and creative use of what you would call classical golden proportion geometries in the relationship of the chords and the notes to each other, will be the ones most conducive for success in this particular context. Now, in general, though there are different ways to express this, phi ratio proportions are those ratios that are in golden sections usually referred to as a ratio of 1 to 1.618. Look for that first. Then, allow yourself also the opportunity, if you are not necessarily the analytical type, to feel which pieces of music vibrate you, move you, and I mean even move you emotionally. Those pieces you can intuit, and the ones that move you strongest are the ones that you need to use. In general, it will be pieces that will allow you to experience a calm but profound sense of energy, of life, of fullness, bigness, if you wish, large-scale energies and consciousnesses expressing these things, if you wish. These are the types of music to look for, and they can be of great assistance. Since all is vibration, and any form you can bring vibration, sound, light, what have you, will assist you in harmonizing and synchronizing with these polyhedral tools. Yes, does that answer your question?
Does that leave out country western?
It leaves nothing out, but again understand that there may be variations of any particular kind or type of music that may exhibit more or less of the kind of ratios that we are talking about. And of course, that can also vary from piece to piece.
Right.
In any general type of music, there can be a piece that can exhibit a high degree or a high amount of phi ratio harmonics. Yes?
Thank you.
Is there an example?
Again, there are many examples. But it will depend also upon intention and focus for what kind of energy you want to utilize or express. For example, one moment. Let us begin, as a brief example, with the understanding that a given piece of music, depending upon the kind of harmonics that it harbors, will have a slightly different effect if you use that same piece of music while concentrating or meditating on a different polyhedron. You follow? So, herein, let's explore a brief example with what you would call the composition from your composer of Holst Mars, since that seems to be timely now with regard to your explorations. If you are not familiar with this piece, then you can, at your own convenience later, become familiar with the piece in the planets called Mars by Holst. And you can understand that that is a very strong harmonic piece for allowing there to be, when used appropriately, strong regenerative physical healing properties to link you, to anchor you, to ground you, paradoxically enough, to the Earth. Since the Earth, in a sense, is the polar opposite of Mars, you can use Mars with various tetrahedral tools to form a gateway paradoxical link-up to use that energy and translate and apply that energy, that vibration, to ground you to the Earth and energize your body simultaneously with the proper male and female polarities to achieve balance. You follow? So that's one example. In using Mars, beginning with the tetrahedron, you will find that by simply allowing there to be what you have recently called a three-dimensional Star of David, in other words, a tetrahedron pointing up, intersecting a tetrahedron pointing down, you follow? And slowly rotating both in a clockwise and counterclockwise direction, one pointing up in that sense, rotating clockwise, the one pointing down, rotating counter, or vice versa. You can reverse them as long as they are going in opposite directions, and with that vibration from that particular piece of music, you will find that that will function as a prismatic lens to take that vibration, and as you visualize these two tetrahedrons intersecting and turning within each other, it will help in the energization of your body and the balancing of the polarity of the male and female energy within you, symbolically represented by the idea of Earth and Mars. You follow? Mars and Earth. So that is one example. And we will get into more of this later. Thank you.